I'm opening. We have an eye, sort of a nostril, 2 teeth. One of the teeth has a small cavity. Close call, folks, but I think we got here just in time.
Presented by Maria Menounos and Kevin Undergaro. This is Anatomy of a Movie. In-depth discussions and breakdowns of various movie titles. And now that you've seen the movie, let the dissection begin.
Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to Popcorn Talks, Anatomy of a Movie. That music right there is from Insurgent, the movie we're discussing today. We're a week behind, more normal than we are, but nonetheless, here we are, and next week we'll be doing Furious 7. I am joined alongside the lovely Sara Stretton, also on Popcorn Talks Box Office Breakdown.
Hello, Phil. So I feel like you really wanted to talk about Insurgent. We were supposed to do this last week, and it got moved. Phil's like, because you couldn't be here, I'm going to blame it on you.
I was at WrestleMania. The two coincided at a terrible, terrible time in my life.
Okay, so, well, at least you get best of both worlds.
Yeah.
That doesn't happen. What was your impression of this movie?
Here's the thing. This movie comes at a time when movies it's just a poo-poo of movies, for lack of a better term. I can't think.
Cinderella was good.
Cinderella was good. Absolutely, 100%. I loved Cinderella. And you know what? This movie for me, I know Hunger Games gets a lot of hype, and they're both Lionsgate kind of distributed. However, this movie to me, when Divergent came out, it was just way different than Hunger Games, and that was before Hunger Games 3 came out, and where 1 and 2 of Hunger Games were so similar, I was like, okay, this is something different. And I didn't know what it was. I didn't read the books, and it was just, honestly, it was just fun. Now, Insurgent, I was looking forward to because I knew it wouldn't be Hunger Games 2, that they would going through the same steps. They would be moving the plot forward. Mm-hmm. There's some elements that, yes, I didn't quite like of this that we can certainly discuss. But overall, honestly, this movie I enjoyed.
Okay, very cool. I think we are going to have a lot to talk about. I wasn't as familiar with the Divergent series until they made the movie. So, like with Hunger Games, I read all of the books before, like Harry Potter, all the books before, Lord of the Rings, the books before. For Divergent, I hadn't read the books, but I do enjoy like reading either alongside or after the movie, so I can compare them. I think it's a good interest. For Divergent, when the first movie came out, I read the book and was very excited to see the movie. So I found out they're making this movie. I was like, I read the book. And it was like very dark, very gruesome. I felt like there was going to be scenes that I was just going to have a hard time stomaching. So when I saw the first Divergent, I kind of felt let down because I felt like it kind of just molded into the general norm of a teen movie. Action, yes, there was fighting, but the book to me had the potential to be so dark that I didn't feel like the movie really grasped that. I thought it was what could have been like a different take on a teen movie. But that would be more of an R-rated movie. Yeah, it would have.
And you would have to, you couldn't make it as big budget.
That's the thing though. It's like what we've proven this year, despite the fact that, movies haven't done
really well,
done rave reviews, our movies have been making a fortune. There's been multiple weekends in the box office over the past year where it's like there's more R movies than anything else. Like it goes from PG to R. There's no PG-13. So that's kind of been disproven that an R movie isn't going to bring in people. So first Divergent, thought that could have had some potential. So let down a little bit. Not to say it was a horrible movie. I was like, wow, I felt like they had the opportunity to take something that's like with teen adolescents and show a really dark side of humanity. And they didn't hit that for me. And then with Insurgent, watched the movie first, had some mixed feelings after seeing this. I was kind of like, I didn't go out being like I wasted my money, but I didn't go out being like I absolutely love it. Then I went back and read the book, and reading the book actually made me like Insurgent, the movie, more. Mm-hmm. Because they completely changed the plot. Completely changed characters. They did a whole reworking. It's very, in my opinion, very loosely based on the book, and I understand a lot of the changes they made. And I thought creatively and visually, a lot of the changes they made made it a smarter movie. There's one big change that I don't think helped them, but overall I was like, wow, they really did take the bones of this book and try and make it a better movie.
So can we start there, because I have not read the books.
Okay.
And Veronica Roth wrote the series, and she did it while she was at NYU. Mm-hmm. So very, very young author.
Very young.
And from what I remember, by the way, if you guys want to go back, watch our Divergent discussion, I actually don't remember any of it. So I'm going to try to pull some references, but they could be completely right. They could be completely wrong. But from what I remember, Dimitri had read the books, or at least Marissa or somebody. And
Me and Marissa had both read the first one.
Okay, yeah, and you guys liked it. And I remember this discussion that you guys liked it for the themes that it presented. And then I forget who said that sort of... the ball rolled out of bounds, so to speak. And is that the case with the second book, is what you're saying? The book is not as great?
This is the way I look at it. Things that they added to this movie increased the necessity for Triss to be a lead character and to move the plot along. For instance, they add, that machine that they target at people's heads, like to see how much percentage they are of whatever.
Yeah.
And we find out that Triss is 100% divergent. So that makes her the ideal candidate for this sim. That element, that device is completely added. At least, okay, I should actually preface this with saying I read 80% of the book. So it could have been in the last 20% because I kept falling asleep in the last 20%. Exactly. So anyway, but that device that finds out she's 100% is totally a new revelation, totally created from the minds of these movie makers. And I thought that was a very direct visual representation of why she needed to be the one found. Mm-hmm. What made her special? What made her still a relevant character versus any other Divergent?
Do you get that in the book, though, that through physical action or things that she does? Because, in the movie, she's very timid, but she knows what she has. She's the reluctant.
That's actually getting into my negative thing that they changed. Because the plot is completely different. There is no cube in the book. There's no unlocking cube. Kate Winslet's character is still on a mission to create another serum that will affect the Divergent. Mm-hmm. And her whole goal is kind of to dissect people and figure out how she's going to make a serum work versus getting at the inside of this message. And there's no seemingly unlocking device. It seems more like it's kind of pushed off as a file that's in her computer that's hard to access.
What I liked, if I may speak about that, the plot in general, I liked it because to kind of go through a serum, again, I didn't want Hunger Games 2, where it was literally we're just back at Hunger Games. Mm-hmm. And yes, things were slightly different, but it was the same steps. Now, it took elements of the first movie in the sense of the simulation and whatever else, and they had to be very much applied to this. And just random question, did you know that the box was going to be very much pro-Divergent? Because necessity-wise... I did.
Because you have to move this on, I don't think you're going to have a box saying that Divergent's bad, because the whole opinion of the society is that Divergent's bad. So the box needs to show something different. I thought the addition of the cube, the unlocking of the cube, was a great plot device. I thought that it created a little bit of a plot hole over if abnegation was the one who was holding on to this sacred vessel, then why particularly were the priors involved, being that neither of them was born abnegation? The mom was born dauntless and the dad was born erudite or whatever. So neither of them are from abnegation, so why are they protecting it? How did this thing from these ancestors end up in the home of two married people who technically are not whose ancestors are not in that faction?
Because they would, I think the simple answer is because they would protect it.
That's what we get to. I just think that's a little bit of a plot hole that wasn't filled out for me. Because if you're saying something's been passed down through generation through generation through generation of people to protect, and it's very rare that people switch factions, then why are two people who switched factions in control of this? Why is it in their house? That was just a little bit of a loose end for me. I didn't understand it. But
I mean, it certainly brought. I get what you're saying. I don't read too much into it, and I mean, the simple answer from a writing perspective is yes, it is a plot hole, but it brought more weight. And as Caitlin, she loved the word irony, and it became everything in the end became ironic, which I did enjoy.
Is their way of controlling coincidence?
Yeah,
it's them using that word ironic as a it's kind of being like, we know this is a coincidence, so we're gonna say it first, so you can't criticize us for it. And that's not the movie's fault. That's, in my opinion, kind of the book's fault, where a lot of it does rely on coincidence. For instance, in the book, I'm not sure if they're gonna reveal this in the next movie, so I'm so sorry if this is a spoiler for you.
Tune out for like a minute.
Tune out for like 10 seconds. In the book, we find out that the person whose message it is, real name is Edith Pryor and is Beatrice's ancestor. That's a coincidence. Then you work back and you find out like Tris going to them for research, being that she's the one who goes, is kind of a coincidence. Like there's a lot of this book is built around coincidence, and the movie takes it head on and is like, we know this, so let's confront it. For instance, like making her 100% divergent. They make it so it's like a fact instead of just, oh, she randomly is the one who shows up. And I thought that how they did that, how they controlled that, how they did use words like irony makes that smart, because they're like, this is the material we have. We're going to change it a lot, try and keep to the themes, and keep this series going. And I thought that a lot of the visual representations were really, like, they did that well.
I thought they did that well, and what I liked, yes, it was to also mark that it was coincident, but the fact of the irony and how it was used, it also became a thing. It became more than that. It became this idea that people who just try so much for control, ironically, don't have any of it, and that became a nice kind of tie-in. And right from the get-go, the fact that you have this device or whatever you want to call it, and the only way it can be opened is by a divergent. Well, it's not like the sacrificing of a lamb to the gods. You know what I mean? It didn't feel like that. It just felt like, okay, if the only way this can be opened by 100% divergent, then it's going to be pro-divergent.
Yeah, I completely agree. And it's funny that the smartest person in the nation can't seem to foresee that, and no one can. I mean, I don't know what they were expecting to be in this box. If you're looking for a divergent, what makes you think that they're the answer to the cube? Why do you not think that they're a larger answer than that? Why do you think they're like the crime if they're the answer to finding this message?
Is one of the messages though that, I mean certainly the answer is yes, but you need all aspects of kind of all of these factions first and foremost, but is it also poking fun at intelligent people who have no street smarts or whatever, like that just don't have any common sense to see beyond their own beliefs?
To me, that's like kind of a funny point, because like when you look at the characters in the Divergent series, besides anyone who is divergent, they're it's supposed to be more of a kind of one note personality. You're either very selfless or very peaceful or very action oriented, and then you're disregarded in all other elements. For instance, they make fun of the Dauntless for being stupid a lot, which is funny to me, because then when you look at so many kind of like superhero teams in other aspects, like that's glorified. For instance, like when you
mean other movies?
Yeah, if you're looking at, for instance, let's just take Fantastic Four, because Miles Teller's going to be in this. You've got your strong one, you've got your smart one, you've got the invisible woman who's good at force fields, and she's the protective one. Like they all kind of
Captain Planet.
Yeah,
you got 5 there.
You get these superhero teams where if you really concentrate on each individual one, they have more or less a faction could be assigned to them. And that's glorified in those things because it makes a good team. And normally your lead character is the one who brings them together and has a little bit of all of them. And like Divergent just takes that but broadens it and says, now these people, let's focus on how this is positive, how this is negative, and what a person who has all of this does to the society.
Now, I have two questions kind of before we dive into some other stuff, but how do you then factionless to you, right? I mean, this is an ever expanding group. It's obviously very similar to homeless people, and yet it's like the most rapid growing faction out of all of these factions.
It's also the most sustainable is not the right word, but they talk about how these people have the capacity to do more than one thing. You know, they've come up with the ability to survive, to unite, to govern themselves, to protect themselves, to feed themselves, to clothe themselves. They come up with plans.
What is different from them and Divergence?
And Divergence?
That's, you know...
Supposedly not much. Like, they kind of hint at that in the movie as well, where it makes sense why, one, a lot of factionalists would be Divergent, because it's the inability to fit into such a rigid society, because they do have more of a flexible personality or a flexible mind that allows them to kind of pop in between or never quite fit. What they say in the movie is the fact she's Divergent because she excels in more than one. So she would be able to fit in Dauntless and be a strong Dauntless. She would be able to fit in whatever, any of them, and she would be able to fit in them and be accepted. Versus factionless, it's like what they make it seem as these people have the capability to kind of go in these categories, but not to the extreme. So they may be very, very brave and active and could have been in Dauntless, but they can't make that furthest leap. They can jump and they can do whatever, but they can't quite go. If they're going into erudite, they're really smart. Their test scores are going to be higher than average, but they're not going to be high enough. That was kind of the difference it's made. It's like they're well-rounded people, but they're just not going to meet the level of this rigid, structured society.
Yeah. And one of the things I from what I remember when we did Divergent, I said how I was very surprised that she picked Dauntless to begin with. But now in this movie, it makes sense in the sense that the training, I think the most training that she ever needed was, athletic based. Because she had all the other qualities, and it just kind of, the society needed to push them out of her, but there was nothing that the factions themselves could have helped. And now, obviously, with her abilities from Dauntless, she can really kick some butt.
I mean, she definitely can. Like, I'll give it to Sheilene Woodley, where she definitely embraced the hard edge of Triss. This is probably one of my bigger problems with the movie that they changed from the book, is that, to me, we all are aware that Sheilene Woodley is supposed to be the main character. To me, they didn't really give her the qualities of a main character in this book. She was oftentimes very angry, flying off the handle. I wasn't rooting for the actions she was doing. I was blatantly aware that she was wrong. And if she's 100% Divergent, I wanted to see more of those other components of her personality besides being Dauntless more at the forefront. I wanted to see her personality be able to switch between each section, and I didn't feel that. I felt that more coming from 4. I felt like 4 in this movie had the characteristics of a main character. He was strong, he was smart, he planned. If you saw him in Candor, like, he was the one in the movie who's like, give us the truth serum. That's a solution. That's a solution that's moving the plot forward. It's smart because he's understanding how the Candor thinks. It's smart because he's the one understanding how to get through and make them allies. Yeah. Without him, they would just have been sent to Janine. And I wanted to kind of see Beatrice fold more into that, to be, if she's the one who's supposedly the most Divergent, if she's the one who can be the solution to all these problems, then I want to be able to see her solving more problems. Yes, eventually she defeats all the Sims and solves the cube. We know she can defeat Sims. Yes, these are harder. Great, you've improved upon a skill you have. For me, it was much more interesting to see how, 4 really could handle all of any situation he was put into. He was coming up with a solution. Like,
That's
if
a
you
good
put
point.
him with
I really like that.
if you put him with the factionless, like, he was the one who's like, he gives his name, he knows how to fight, like, he's navigating all of these different mind types. And that was a change. That is a change from the book. I feel like in the book 4 is often flying off the handle or making comments about how he just wants to punch someone or being a little more rash, and like, you see Tris kind of calculating more. Yes, we do get to hear the inside of her thoughts, so we get to understand that she's calculating more, versus that's hard to represent visually in a movie. But that kind of outweighed. Also, there's a huge, through the whole book of Insurgent, Tris and 4, their relationship is on the rocks. They're in this push and pull, in agreement and disagreement, talking about the secrets they're hiding from each other.
I thought 4 really did a good job of being you know what I mean? Like,
Yeah,
in terms
he did
of
a wonderful job.
I thought he was fantastic at keeping the relationship going, whereas Trish, I was like, okay, do a little bit more there, and that could have been the compassionate side of her more, and obviously she cared about him. That's not the question, but I don't think she showed it quite as much. And I thought there was more she could have done between 4. One of the things you could have seen between 4 and his mother, and really bringing them together, that could have been a great moment as we're speaking about it.
And someone could say to you, like, well, that's not what her function is in the book, but they've changed so much from the book to the movie that they could have made that choice. I don't know if that had been the smartest choice, because they do very strongly hint that Naomi Watts' character, For's mother, is not a nice woman and is extremely manipulative. And they even make kind of comparisons between her and Janine, and which is if she's even going to be
Lesser
better.
of two evils, yeah.
So I don't know if I would completely side with Tris wanting to promote the mother-son relationship because she doesn't trust him. At the same time, I felt like what they decided to do for this movie was make Tris and 4, their relationship, strong enough to test through all of this and always be with each other, and maybe hit a few bumps, but never like let go of each other's hand. Like, they were always standing side by side. And that is a completely different choice than the book. I'm not saying it's wrong, because I think even though the Divergent and Insurgent were only a year apart, I don't think that personally I really felt like they were inseparable yet. So I think if they had hit so many rocky patches, I wouldn't really believe that they were in love so quickly. Does that make sense? So I understand, like, for a relationship standpoint and wanting to make this a trilogy, you needed to give people more of the love side of their relationship so that you want them to stay together. Because if you go through 1 where they just got together and all of a sudden they're in 2 and they're going back and forth and they're not trusting each other and they're keeping secrets like they are in the book, then are you really rooting for them as a couple? Not so much. So the movies are like, we want people to be on board for this relationship. We want people to like them together. And I think that choice probably works for a trilogy. It's probably smarter of them.
I get 100%. And one of the things, going back to, I want to address a couple of things with at the end of the day, there's a quote that I like, and I'm just going to paraphrase it because I don't know 100%. But with especially your hero, you want them to almost go through the worst of the worst. And so even though she wasn't making certain choices in the beginning, at the end, when it all came together, she did what she needed to do, and she's still standing, right? So you look at someone that, despite, and she's haunted by all those things in the past, and that's part of her trepidation, but there she is, still standing. And so that's a strong person at the end of the day. I want to ask you if you've been reading anything about Sheilene Woodley and people's kind of dislike for her in this role, as you could in many ways say it's a direct comparison of Jennifer Lawrence to Sheilene Woodley, because the Hunger Games and this are so sort of similar, but her as a leading lady, I honestly don't have a problem with her. I think she did great.
This is kind of my opinion on Sheilene, and I think I've said this before, I think that she has a lot of talent. I think that compared to how Jennifer Lawrence has controlled her career, or her agents or managers have controlled her career, Sheilene's have kind of gone about it a different way. For instance, Sheilene really got popular off of an ABC Family show that wasn't really highly credited for its acting chops amongst the whole thing. Like, no one went to that show and was like, this is just full truth believability. Like, that wasn't the reaction. And then she came out with the movie with George Clooney and Descendants, and people loved her and were like, wow, this girl has such potential. And
I feel like that movie was just overhyped in every aspect.
It was very hyped, but people loved her. I think that the next move would have probably been to release like a blockbuster kind of talent-driven movie, versus I think what really people saw after that for her was Divergent. So you built up all this hype of this.
Which one did she film first? Was it and
these are the movies she had. She had like Divergent, Fault in Our Stars, Spectacular Now.
That's what I'm saying. Spectacular Now, though, she finally was able to showcase herself.
And some of the critics saw that, but I don't think you can say that that's a huge movie.
Absolutely not.
Versus if you look at Jennifer Lawrence's career, who came out strong with something like, she came out with Winter's Bone, huge critical acclaim, tons of exact same thing, like hype, she's amazing, we need to watch this girl. And then the next thing you really are hearing from her is, yes, she's coming out with Hunger Games, which was a huge success, but Silver Linings Playbook, also huge amongst the critics and huge amongst the masses. And it like solidified her for people, that she was amazing, that she was living up to all the hype.
Well, she had X-Men, she had that, then American Gangster.
But the way she's kind of balanced her superhero-esque roles with her acting chops, like the people she's pairing up with, whether it be Bradley Cooper or doing the whole American Hustle thing or whatnot, like her career feels very like full, and you understand where she's going and you trust in her and whatever she does. I'm pretty sure I've said this before, but Sheilene, like, you know the potential's there, but you don't know if it's going to be there in every project because of kind of the, like, it just hasn't felt as consistently full. And like, I don't feel like you go in as excited for her performance. You're like, I hope she reaches her, or
so like
pushes
Fault
her
in Our
limits.
Stars for you, she did, like, you were going to see Fault in Our Stars for Fault in Our Stars, not for Shailene Woodley.
Exactly.
Okay.
Exactly.
I mean, I don't know. I
really like her.
For me, ironically, I actually like, as I said, I like this series more than Hunger Games. But to me, Hunger Games and Jennifer Lawrence are synonymous. Whereas I wouldn't say, for me, the Divergent series is not synonymous with Shailene Woodley.
I think it's making a bigger star out of the guy who's playing Tobias/4.
Theo James.
Yeah, I think that he is the one kind of people are really latching on to. I think after all of the Whiplash things, yes, people are recognizing obviously Miles Teller more. His comedy in this movie I thought was really strong, like the laughs that he got. But with Miles Teller, I thought he was slightly underutilized. Here's the thing: I don't know if this is the right role for him. Well, he got pulled in by Shailene Woodley.
I get that, and that's great. But part of it is, I mean, how far in advance do you know?
It's not hurting him. It's not. This role isn't hurting him. I don't think he's underutilized because this isn't Miles Teller's movie. Like, it should be more of a cameo.
I think what I mean to say honestly, and they may not make him as much money, but he is amazing at comedy. Yeah. And for me, as a Miles Teller fan, I either want to see him in a Spectacular Now, where he was that really troubled teen going to college, or I want to see him in 21 and Over.
This is the thing, though. Like, Miles Teller's gonna have
he's got a diverse career.
He's got a diverse career. He's busy. You know, he is talented and smart. That I feel like until I see it, like I haven't really seen anything that has hurt him. And like, if he's having fun doing this and wants to be with his friends, and he added something cool to the movie for me, like I'm gonna not say don't do that movie. Like he made this movie a little better. So
what aspects? I mean, there was a lot that he did, but
I just found him funny.
Where he turned and then he came back and then he turned on Kate Winslet.
Just like his kind of his delivery of the lines, his perspective on this character, I just found very interesting and entertaining. And at first, like his character's like comes on with a very strong point of view, almost to the point at first where you're kind of like, whoa. Calm down. You're like operating on level energy 8 and everyone else is on 6, but it just works for him, at least for me, that when he comes on screen, and like I believe kind of his character turns just given to anyone, like just out of the script, are very all of the sudden. Like 1 minute he's fighting her, 1 minute he hates them, 1 minute he's turning on them, 1 minute he's helping her pretend she's dead and escaping again. Like he has so many things that like could easily be unbelievable. Like if you're attacking this role as like just an very mean person, which you could get from the book, because Peter, we have to remember, is the guy who stabbed someone in the eye, who attacked Tris, who's just like brutal bully. Like he could be read as so harsh, so mean, and then you're like, why is this person saving him? But he adds that sense of like funny, of like maybe there is something under the surface. Like I don't want to believe it because you're kind of a douchebag, but you're also funny, and like
he just doesn't know better because he's dauntless and he lacks.
But then he's also like erudite and he's trying to get ahead, but I don't know. He just like adds something to me that like I wasn't like, oh, I really don't believe that you've now helped Tris. Mm-hmm. Like I did believe him. So I like that component that he adds to the Peter character. We also have to understand that in this book, in this movie, they really funnel down the characters in Insurgent. You're talking about you have Tris, you have Four, you have Kate Winslet's character, you have Peter.
I want to talk about the brother, and I want to talk about the new characters in a minute, but continue your point.
There's really just a handful. Like yeah. I can tell you who are the stars of the movie. Like that is a complete like directional thing that they script people were like, we need this many bad guys, we need this many good guys, and we need them to appear this many times, or they have this many scenes each, so that the audience can have something to follow. Versus in the book, you have like half of your bad guys not showing up till the very end. You have people just showing up in the middle. There's no like through guy. You don't like the erudite, and whenever they show up, they're the bad guy. It's a very like just this type of person instead of individual characters, like how we have Eric. Eric is a bad guy. Kate Winslet's character is like the villain. Do you know what I mean? Like, so we have the audience is tracking someone. They're expecting like this is the worst person who can show up, and they're showing up. Versus in the book, you're kind of like, oh, these are bad people. Something bad's gonna happen. Like the stakes aren't as high. Mm-hmm. Like the audience has developed a relationship with Eric. You feel more when he dies, when he's there, versus just some random guy, dauntless traitor, which is portrayed in the book.
So speaking of, let's start with the brother, and then we'll Caleb, and open up to the other characters, played by Ansel Elgort. Mm-hmm. Now, part of it, I want to ask you, with Divergent, we saw their relationship. We saw Sheilene, his before Fault in Our Stars. Now this is coming after Fault in Our Stars. Does it change your viewing of the movie in any sort of way in their relationship?
I think that as a general question, which is probably how you're asking it, people really liked, Ansel and Sheilene. I personally thought that they had a very kind of like, when I saw Fault in Your Stars or whatever, I thought that their relationship, yes, I believe that they had chemistry. Did I feel like they were like the soulmates for each other? No. for anyone who did get that feeling from that movie that these two were soulmates, I'm sure it kind of affected their watching of this. Maybe in a good way. Maybe the betrayal of her brother hurt more because they expected them to be on the same side. Or maybe you were like, hey, I think you should be with him and not with Forbes. Although if that's crossing your mind, I think you're getting very confused.
Weird. That would be...
Yeah, like, but like that's, if you really believed that in Fault in Our Stars they were meant for each other, then maybe that did affect you. For me, I liked them in Fault in the Stars. I didn't feel like they were like each other's one and only. I thought that they could find love with plenty of people. Like it wasn't a couple that I was like,
it wasn't Romeo and Juliet.
No, not for me.
So what about, so now you have a different dynamic. It's brother and sister, and I don't know. He time wise he didn't leave early, but relationship wise and story wise, I felt he did it, and part of it was, it was supposed to be a rash decision. Maybe he didn't quite think about it and whatever else, but I certainly didn't expect that to happen, to be honest. I thought maybe, because what I liked was we were forming a team, and I could understand Miles Teller's Peter going the way that he did and being like, hey, they're up here, because that's just how he is. But this, is family, and so, but it did reiterate the fact of faction over blood. What is it?
Yeah, that's exactly what it is. His character really kind of confused me. For instance, like even at the beginning, which I guess was foreshadowing, when we see he has the ability at one point to like hit someone in the head or something to execute violence, and then 2 seconds later Beatrice is like being choked over the edge of a train by a factionless, and now he can't do that. He like, I felt like he wasn't a violent person or whatever, and then all of a sudden we see him be violent, and then 2 seconds later his sister is in danger and he doesn't act on it again. Like he didn't overcome that obstacle that he just overcome 2 seconds ago, and he can't be violent for his sister and like for us to come in and save the day. And I was kind of like, and now looking back at that movie, I was like, was that supposed to tell me that he's not on his sister's side kind of from the beginning? Like he has this curiosity to know. I get that, but I don't really understand. I don't really understand his character. I don't understand what allows him to be violent at some point and then go back to get answers. Like, I just didn't know if I believed that he was completely unsatisfied with where he was and wanted to be back, or that he should have left. Like, I couldn't track his opinions. And maybe I'm getting confused because I did read the book, but it was... I don't know what my feelings were towards him. Like, how did you feel about him as a character?
I felt really let down because I wanted, as I said, them as a group. They were going to be together, finally brother and sister, and he could be someone to help stand on, and where she suffered so much loss, you would think that maybe he would have some of these qualities, even though he's a erudite, he's basing things off intelligence, then he would have some compassion for her, and together they would come out of this. But then to have it ripped out, and I don't know if I could ever like him as a character, despite all that. I mean, I guess I don't have
they
amnesty
positioned
much
him to kind of be, I mean, him and Peter both kind of go through the same actions, right?
Peter,
Peter, you
comedy-wise, because of that, I could, ironically, because he doesn't know better.
See, and that's the funny part, is that like maybe it's the whole brother thing, that it's a higher sense of betrayal. But I do come out being like, oh, I kind of get Peter. I kind of like her. For Caleb, and I know that Roxy saw this movie and was like, I'm so angry at Caleb, and I was like, I think probably multiple people that would feel that way, because you just don't know what's going on, and you don't want to trust him.
She has such a strong sibling love, especially with her siblings, and then she applies that to everything else. So.
I mean, so it's he's a hard character to follow. I think that they did a really good job with characters like For's mom, who I think that they do impose, like, she's very manipulative and you don't know whether to trust her. You know where she's coming from. You know she's been hurt and betrayed, now has this place that she's running and wants control. Like, I get her. I don't like her and I don't trust her, and I know she's dangerous, but I understand. Sometimes with Kate Winslet's character, I feel like she's kind of just been driven mad by this question of what she needs, that she's oblivious to the obvious answers, but I can at least rationalize that. That's the thing. There's a lot of characters like that I can rationalize why they're thinking. Caleb, I'm a little lost on that one. Maybe I'll have to rewatch.
So what did you think of the new characters we had? In addition to Naomi Watts, we had Octavia Spencer, Johanna,
or Joanna, or whatever. I don't know how you pronounce it.
Who had the sort of best cameo for you? I mean, Naomi became sort of the most important addition, but
yeah, I remember thinking after we find out that Octavia Spencer and like Naomi Watts are in it, I was like, and you got Kate Winslet. I'm like, wow, you've got some heavy hitters in this movie. Just like people who I feel like other actors respect. Mm-hmm. Like, I don't think you're gonna get a lot of people who are like, Octavia Spencer, what can she do? Like, I've never heard anyone say that. People are like, Octavia Spencer, she's good. Yeah. Like Kate Winslet, no, they're great actors, actresses, and so and I thought that they all did a good job with like fulfilling these characters. Also, like, they're all supposed to have a faction to align with, factionless, amity, erudite, but they all have other layers, which I think shows that like Triss isn't alone. Mm-hmm. And I liked that those actors brought that to their performance versus like really just letting themselves just be amity or just be like they like showed that there's more to it than just happy-go-lucky peacefulness. My favorite cameo, I really think Naomi Watts did a good job.
Honestly, I didn't really recognize her.
I could see that.
I didn't, so I thought they did a great job with that.
I'm not supposed to trust her, and I didn't trust her, and then but I still wanted to trust her because she was Tobias's mother. So I was like, that's good that you can get me to feel that way.
Yeah, because her story, at least, regardless of anything else, just kind of losing for it made sense from her perspective. And now, was she right in the actions that she eventually took? No, not necessarily, but
yeah, I mean, a lot of that can be debated about who's in the right and wrong, and with Marcus and whatnot. What I have to say most about this movie is they made some very strong sections, and they really drove this through a plot with a mission by entering in that cube at the very kind of beginning and making it a task that Janine had to accomplish, and it needed to be accomplished by a Divergent, and being that it was 100%, and then I was like, okay, you're giving me a mission and why this mission has to be completed by Triss versus a Divergent. It's a little coincidental, yes, but
ironic,
but I'll take it. On top of that, really they narrowed it down to just going from, amity to candor to the factionless, or back and forth, versus in the book they do add this whole going back to Dauntless spiel, where they go back to Dauntless, they reclaim that, they have a weird paintball gun fight, and they elect leaders, to which 4 is one of the leaders. They have a lot of stuff that's going on that I feel like they kind of chopped off some of the fat and tried to make this into more of a story that you could follow the characters, you could follow the plot, and you could see people's motivations. I think that they did some of that from what they had, and really giving themselves permission to rework it. I thought they did a good job.
That's it too. Mm-hmm. So why don't we kind of get into the more of the production side of stuff, and then if you want, we can go back to story a little bit, and obviously we'll predict kind of things going into the third movie. But it was interesting, it's always interesting when a new director takes this on, and so it was, the director of the first one, could not make it because he was still completing Divergent. So we have a new director for this one, directed by Robert Schwenkel.
I'm so bad at pronouncing names. Sorry.
Schwenkel. But the original was Neil Berger. Much easier to say.
Yeah. I think it's funny when you're like trying to make a cohesive series and like the first one isn't really even done. So you're like wondering how much the second director even got to see when they were creating their own vision for it.
I almost feel like with these, it's almost like in TV, you just need a showrunner, like an overall person to run.
Yeah, I can totally see that. Did you like the look of this movie compared to, and how he kind of pieced it together compared to the first one?
I didn't really notice that much difference, style-wise, between the first and the second.
Yeah, I would say me neither. I think that they had the most visually impacting, I guess, is more inclusions in this is always The Sims and what they do. This one did feel very video gamey to me. Especially when she has like the spinning building of fire and her mom inside. I didn't really feel like the stakes were that high for me watching it because it felt so much like a video game that I wasn't worried about her mom. I wasn't worried about her succeeding. So sometimes that would pull me out a little because I think that I wanted to feel the adrenaline she was feeling. And I was kind of like, oh, okay, you're going to see her succeed or you're going to wake up. There's no real danger here.
Yeah, I guess you're right. And one of the things the first one kind of did, it became, yes, there was action, but it was also a little bit more philosophical about what she would choose to do. And this, you're right, in that sense, it was just very action-based.
And it was like she's been trained as a Dauntless, so she's going to do what the Dauntless would do to a really high level. Okay. Got it.
And I forget, did she actually, when she walks by Peter and chooses not to shoot him,
yes,
that passed the test? Because I thought it did, but then it didn't.
What that was, or what I believe that Janine was saying, was that each sim is specifically designed for one key to unlock. So it's not like you can go into a situation and all of them are going to be like, bling, you did everything. It's like, this is the Dauntless sim. This is the Amity sim.
But you can display traits.
You can display traits of the others, but you're not going to pass that test because you're not in that test yet.
Yeah.
So when she let Peter go, that was an example of how she could forgive him and be peaceful or whatever. So Janine was like, oh, you're going to pass that test. I know, because you've kind of shown the signs. But she wasn't in that test to pass it.
Yeah.
She was in that test for another section.
And part of it is,
yeah,
I mean, part of it too. One of the more difficult parts about this, and I can only pinpoint it into that moment. I thought the other ones worked fine. Is that something like that? Like, if you know that you have to pass a certain test, and like the obvious choice is like, okay, I can shoot him or I can forgive him, then through my actions, let me just forgive him, even though I may or not want to.
I know.
So the simulation of that becomes difficult. Like, you know what the end result needs to be.
Yeah.
In order to pass the test.
Which is why she can always pass The Sims. It's also like why I felt like there was the one simulation where she's talking with her mom and she's like admitting all this stuff, and I think it's the candor test, so she's going to be truthful. And I was kind of like, I'm just going to chalk this up because I don't believe that you would just offer up this information, even if it is to your mom. I'm just going to believe that I know you're in this sim and you know how to pass it. And that's what I'm chalking this scene up to. It's a strategy. Because...
So how do how would you test out these things? I mean, that's one of the more difficult questions of a simulation.
What do you mean?
Like, how would you test for truth?
Well,
or honest.
That's exactly how. I mean, I guess it's like if you can open up and be vulnerable. I don't know if it really weighs what is the truth or not, except for it's in your own mind, so you do know what the truth. It's a giant lie detector test simulation. I don't really know. I think that she'd already been through candor, and obviously the truth was hard for her, and then all of a sudden it was easy for her in the sim. because I guess she was talking to her mom. I just took it again as strategy. Like, she knew what she had to do, and she passed it.
Lies hurt more than truth.
According, in this one, with the whole Will screaming, like, scene as she, like, curled into a ball with her face. Do you remember this scene? Do you know what I'm talking about? With the candor, which was, to me, also a huge change from the book, but what can you do?
Yeah, and I mean, I would have, maybe we will, but I liked kind of the riff that was starting on between, Candor and Erudite of like, come on, who's and it goes back to 4. Who's gonna be better at putting this trial together, them or you?
Yeah, no,
so I enjoyed that.
That was wonderful. But so we talked about, like, they brought in this new director and these new parts. For me, there were sections that were a little more video gaming. I think in general the team that they put goes back to the writing and directing about how they focused it on specific characters. I thought was smart of them, especially because they drew from a lot of the prominent characters in the first film, continued the audience's relationship with them. I really don't remember the music from this film at all. Not really, sorry.
There's
it sounded, I don't know how to really similar to the first one.
It did. And that's, I think it built upon what was in the first one. I don't know how to describe kind of the overall feel of what it's like
airy techno.
Okay, I'm gonna go with that because I can't describe it any better. Absolutely, but I think it has its own theme. Is it going to be listened to afterward? It's not as iconic like the little bird whistle from Hunger Games. That's at this point iconic.
Yeah.
But yeah,
they're not going to get a top 40 hit like how Insurgent, how Hunger Games, the Hanging Tree, making the charts. I personally don't think Insurgent's getting any of that, which is interesting because like we have seen a pattern of teen movies really utilizing soundtracks and then selling them, and it's a whole nother marketing ploy. It's like gets people on board. They bring really big artists in. Hunger Games did it. Twilight did it. Bunch of teen movies on it. Insurgent hasn't so much. I do know that they have like one song by a kind of popular artist, but overall it is much more, I feel like, score oriented.
Yeah. It was the Holes in the Sky by M83 featuring Hayam.
Yeah, but I mean, is it really going to be making the dent that other teen movies music has made? No, I don't think so. But in the box office, it's making as much money. So
Fast and the Furious 7 that soundtrack discussion will take like 20 minutes in itself. That'll be interesting next week. So who better to talk box office numbers with, if not Dimitri, than certainly Sara Stretton.
I mean, I'm
budgeted at $110 million,
it's a ton of money, but movies like this can range over 250. I mean, when you're talking about budget, like the amount of stars you have in this, the amount of effects you have in this, and just in general, it's a huge franchise. Like, they know they're getting money back, so they typically put a lot in. For instance, like domestic total already, this is 91 million, and overseas, it's at like almost like 100 million. So they've made their money back, and I wouldn't even say that this is a fantastic film, but it's bankable.
Yeah, absolutely. So it'll be interesting kind of to see how it holds up. It was number 1 first weekend,
and then it dropped like 60%.
Well, what Get Hard came out?
I mean, Get Hard came out. Home came out.
Home, yeah.
But I think that
then you got Furious 7 this weekend.
This is become an international movie. I mean, that's where it's going to be making more of its money. Yeah, you got you have your hardcore Divergent fans, mostly I'm sure book lovers and people who love the first film who saw it during that first week. I mean, it's still only open to, I think, like 52, which isn't that high. When we're talking about like other Disney movies and such, normally I think Cinderella opened up to almost 70. Like,
people were like,
it was number 1. It didn't get as much traction, but it will do well overseas, and they will make a third one because of that.
Yeah, and I'm looking forward to seeing the completion of the trilogy. Speaking of that, what do you? I mean, you didn't read the third book yet.
I've not read the third.
But even regardless, like just from a perspective of as a movie, because they've already changed, elements. Is this just going to be? Are we going to be primarily outside the wall?
That's the thing. It's just the inclusion of outside the wall, and then you have to see what power Naomi Watts' character has, and if she's going to fight outside the wall or let them go outside the wall. But that's what they've been leading up to. I thought they were going to include more of outside the wall in the second one, and they didn't. So,
I thought so too, a little bit, but then as we're halfway through, I thought, okay, and we're still nowhere near solving the puzzle. I was like, all right, scratch that idea for this one.
So that's what just people have been waiting for. It's like they've already now in the movie version established so much of Tristan Port's relationship. I'd be really surprised if it broke up. If I'm looking at the book perspective, in which the second one they really had a hard time, I would feel like 3 would be rebuilding that together and coming back together. So who knows, now maybe they're in the task of the third one where they have built up this information. They do have to create a major rift that they then mend, or if they're just going to keep them strong all the way. I think that could be a really big plot point, especially because his mom and his dad and their whole family weird crazy relationship is probably going to be involved. You also have the whole, if they do go outside of the wall, yes, there are people like the factionless and the Divergent who are going to have very intense reactions to that. But what are places like Amity going to do? Like, they're just these kind people. Who knows what they're going to greet outside the wall? How do you combine that? I have not read the third book. Obviously, I have not seen the third movie. Who knows if we're going to see any time jumps or what we're going to get. But definitely need to build a little bit of relationships and now need to deal with Force Mom and power.
I just don't want kind of an open-ended ending, and overall it will be, but I don't want this type of open-ended ending where it would be the equivalent of like one of the monorails going by, we're pulling out of the city, we can have Trish and 4 kind of hand in hand, like, even though we don't know what the future will bring, we know there's hope.
Oh yeah,
it would
be very, very annoying if the whole third book is factionless taking power and trying to prohibit them from going outside, and then like the end being like, now you get to go outside. I was gonna be like, really? I thought I could go outside in the second book, in the second movie, and you're gonna make me wait till non-existent time? That would be really infuriating.
I think we have to see the outside world, and I'm very curious how they're gonna do it visually and everything else. So that's a lot to look forward to there. So, all right.
Do we have a release date on the third one?
Next year.
Is it? Are you making that up?
Why would I be making that? Well,
are you making that up?
I am making it up based off very accurate information, i.e., the last one came out around this time. This one has come out around this time. So a year from now. You're guessing. Lord of the Rings did it that way. Hobbit did it that way. Hunger Games has done it that way. Harry Potter did it that way. No, sometimes they divided things in half. Sometimes they Harry Potter, the last one, they divided in half, and one was, part 1 and part 2 were closer with they were within a year of each other. But everything else has been about a year. At what point am I wrong? Why are you checking? I'm checking. I'm just looking it up. They're going to double up with Hunger Games 4 and Divergent 3 same weekend. But is it part 1 of 3? Is it part... No, it's got to be a trilogy. You think it's just narrowing down to 3 movies? I think so. Okay, I'll believe you because I can't look it up this fast. That's what I got. You can't. There's going to be a third. That's it. There's no more to do. All right. Well, then we will only have one more review of this. All right, and that'll complete our Divergent series. In the meantime, let's hit that beautiful music. Here you go. See? Oh, I think, is this the artist song, though? Holes in the Sky. Holes something. It's got singing, so, yeah. Take it in. It's airy techno. I feel like it's exactly what I described. Very good, then. Let us know if you think it's airy techno or not in the comments section below. Unfortunately, Sara Stretton doesn't have a Twitter, but you can converse via a hashtag Sara Stretton, hashtag Sara Stretton, or hashtag Sara Stretton. Get a Twitter. You can, of course, interact with us at Movie Anatomy and Popcorn Talk's Twitter as well, The Popcorn Talk. Dimitri Panos, Marissa. What?
Allegiant Part 1, 2016. Allegiant Part 2, 2017.
Oh no.
Just saying.
The new trend of trilogies. 4.
3 will become 4. Yep.
Man. All right, well, there you have it.
Just letting y'all know.
Thank you guys for joining us. We'll see you next week for Furious 7. Definitely check out all the other Anatomy of movies we've done. There's so many. I think over what? I think we're getting close to 200.
Something like that.
That's pretty crazy. And by the way, speaking of other content, there's so much great content, starting with Box Office Breakdown on Mondays with the lovely Sara Stretton. We've got DC movie news with Roxy Stryer. We've got Marvel movie news. We've got profiles with Malone and Mance. We've got Meet the Movie Press, and we've got Schmoes Know Movie Show, and so many more that we're starting up. So we'll see you here next time.
From producers Maria Menounos, Kevin Undergaro, Phil Svitek, and the rest of the Anatomy of a Movie staff, we would like to thank you for listening and subscribing to the show. If you have any questions or comments, feel free to email or tweet us. I'm Sir Richard Wentworth, and this has been Anatomy of a Movie.